Hi everybody, this is Mike Oppenheim, and you are listening to the Coffin Talk podcast, Interviews with the Living, a weekly podcast that explores how our views on death affect the way we live our life. This week, we have a very special guest, someone I've met and talked to thoroughly, and I can't wait to ask her questions now. Her name is Kirsten Rudberg, and after growing up overseas and traveling extensively, she decided it's more fun when everyone's invited to the sandbox, so she went to seminary, she got her MDiv, and now she's a creative who strives to bring different voices and points of view on her podcast, which is called Bite-Sized Blessings. There will be a link to it in the notes, and I've been on it, so I've also posted it on my socials. And she also rewrites the Peter Rabbit book series. So I am a huge fan of our guest, and with no further delays, welcome to the show.
Thanks. I'm super excited to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, and thank you again for agreeing to come on. It's always fun because you kind of get to know me better when I'm on your show, and then now I get to return the favor and ask you all the questions I wanted to secretly ask you during your show.
Well, I am looking forward to it.
Awesome. And one of those questions is not something I was looking forward to asking, but it's just something we ask everyone, which is how old are you, where did you grow up, and what generation, if any, do you consider yourself a member of?
Oh, gosh. Okay, so I'm 53. I grew up, as you stated in the intro, overseas. So Guyana, South America, because of my father's job. So I've traveled pretty extensively. And then, oh my gosh, are you kidding? The best gen ever, Gen X. I am a fan of Gen X and everything that happened. Well, most of everything that happened back then.
I'm a huge fan of Gen X too. I'm a little jealous. But I am not. I'm technically, I could try to claim it, but it's not really there. But all of my, idols growing up are Gen X. So.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
And forgive me if I am lambasting incorrectly or falsely associating it, but is Guyana the country that is also famous for Jim Jones settling there?
Yes.
Okay. So
absolutely, yes.
Gotta ask it. Does that ever come up when you live there? Is that like something that they talk about?
No.
Okay.
No, we did not talk about that, and I'm grateful.
Cool. Yeah. Just curious. It always flies to my mind when I hear that country, and I'm like, oh. How old were you when you first lived in America?
So when I came back to the States, after living overseas for about 4 years, it was I was just flabbergasted. Because I came from a place where, everybody liked everybody. Every culture, religion, food was accepted into the middle of America to Illinois. And my 10-year-old brain could not understand that. It was completely confusing. But you know what? I wouldn't give living overseas. It is the biggest gift my parents ever gave me. Just seeing how big the world was, how different it was, and gorgeous, it's changed my entire life.
That's really cool. And have you gone back to South America frequently?
No, I have not. I actually, since we did most of our traveling in Asia and, South America. When I travel, I try to go see other places like Europe.
Yeah, that makes sense. I totally understand. I can infer and I can guess what like the gift is of like what your parents did for you and all that, but is there a way to articulate it? Like what would be something you have that someone like me doesn't have because I didn't have that experience in my youth?
Oh gosh. I mean, I think, I'm more willing to just be open to the other, only because I understand that people are very complex and that essentially at the end of the day, most of us want the same thing, to be safe, to have food, to have a house, someplace safe to sleep, to be happy, to be content, and to be accepted and to belong in a community or to a friend group or whatever, to be accepted. And I think, just by virtue of having this experience of understanding that as a child, playing with everybody, we're all the same. We all want the same thing. It kind of just not only stimulated this thirst in me later in life to get to know as many people as possible and hear their stories, but also to kind of give them the benefit of the doubt and understand that even though things might be challenging in conversation, that, we can get there to where we actually like each other, can feel each other out, feel good about what we learn about each other, and then, go from there.
Yeah. And I mean, that's honestly like instantly the feeling you gave me when we did your podcast. And actually your podcast made me want to consider, and I still am, doing like the face-to-face communications. The reason I don't do it is because of the quality of audio and stuff like that. But the reason I enjoyed yours was you're very warm. And like, as soon as I saw you on camera, I like relaxed. And I'll just throw this out there. The reason I
Thank
don't like it is I don't like looking at myself and like seeing me when I talk. It's very distracting for me. It's not narcissism, but it probably is, if that makes any sense. But it's negative narcissism, I can tell you that much. But yeah, so.
Well, it is weird.
But you really do a good job of being warm and friendly and nice, and it's sincere, and it's not just because I'm a guest on your podcast. It's not, I mean, I could just tell, like, it's really a cool thing that you extend. So you're not just saying these words on my podcast to like me and an audience that's going to hear you. I'm like corroborating that you really actually do that. And so, since you can do that, and since you do it well, do you feel like we're just like a few more Kirstens away from like having enough people to create more of a peaceful sense across the world? Like what's going on in your opinion?
Oh my gosh, that's such a great question. I have to say that, part of the reason I do the podcast is I have this insatiable need to meet other people, but then also I really love the content of my podcast, which is asking people about these somewhat supranormal events in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone defines that in a different way. And so, the podcast for me is essentially a selfish endeavor. I don't want to say that, it's entirely altruistic. I mean, I do it so that I can meet other people, kind of create this web of friendship. And, some people that I've met have become dear friends. So it's really interesting how this web of connection is being built and I'm sure for you with your podcast, getting to know people, having the conversation on the podcast, continuing friendship. And if we all kind of do this thing where we reach out and we create friendship, create belonging, yes, I hope it's just a few Kirstens away, because I think it could be really beneficial for everybody. And remind people that the world is a good place.
Yeah, totally. No, that's really cool. And I definitely have made, I wouldn't call like close friends, but I have people who are in my life now because of the podcast, and I love it. It's like awesome to have that happen. And I do feel like there's so many people on this like circuit of doing podcasts now, and it sometimes gets made fun of, but usually the default reply from very successful podcasters down to people who have like a very few small listenership is the same, which is, who cares? It's fun and my audience likes it and I enjoy it. So it's like, I really like this era of like just conversationality that's going on. I love that, like, because when I was a kid, talk radio was awesome and it totally went away. And I'm not talking about like Howard Stern. I'm talking about like, the better quality, although I did like some of that stuff. Before we move away from your podcast, because I want to keep this kind of all in the same organized thing, what is the most supernatural event from your life that you've ever experienced?
Oh my God. That is such a good question. You're talking about my own personal experience, right? Not a story from the podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Although, hint, guess what the second question is going to be. So,
well, you have to know, I did research and I made a list of some of the conversations that happened on my podcast. So I'm ready to talk about that. But so I would say the most supernatural thing that's ever happened to me is one day I was sitting on my couch, being totally lazy in the morning, and I just got this prompt, like this really unmistakable prompt: get off the couch, go on a walk. And I said to myself, look, it's not the time for me to go on a walk. I go later. And it was like, no, go on a walk now. Finally, after hemming and hawing and being a jerk about it, because I'm really stubborn, I put on my shoes and I went out the front door and I thought, okay, what way do you want me to walk? I was very, we'll say, incorrigible. And it was like, turn left. So I turned left and I started walking to the end of the block, and it was like, turn left again. So it led me through this kind of like hiking area near my house. And I got to a juncture and it said, turn left and go back to the street. And I thought, okay, I'm bonkers. I can't believe it. You're making me go back to the street. This is the stupidest thing I've ever experienced. And I went back to the street and I started walking back towards my house, and this car passed me and it pulled over in front of me about half a block ahead. And a woman got out, was looking all around. She looked lost. And I thought, whoa, that woman's lost. And she got back in her car, drove a few houses more, got out, started looking. And I thought, oh dear, that person's really trying to find something. And all of a sudden, like a bolt out of the blue, it hit me that a woman was coming to look at this free table that I was giving away on Craigslist, and that it was exactly the time when she should be arriving at my house. And I thought, oh my gosh. And she had said she was going to be in a Nissan Rogue. And I was like, that's a Nissan Rogue. So I trotted on up to her and I said, are you by chance looking to pick up a free table? And she said, yes. And I said, oh my God, I'm the person that you're supposed to pick up the free table from. She said, I am so lost. I did not write your address down. I had no idea where you lived. I looked at your house from space, but it doesn't look the same from the street. And she said, I was going to have to turn around and go home. And I thought, no, it's down at the end of the block on the corner. I'll meet you there. And it was at that moment that I realized, oh my God, if I hadn't have been out there, she would have never found my house. She would have never been known where to, and I would have not known why she didn't show up.
Yeah.
And at that moment I understood. I was like, okay, something else is happening here.
That's so cool. And I love to, this is going to sound weird. I love that it's for something like small, because it actually further proves a point of something I believe in what's going on in the universe, because it sounds small, meaning like, oh, so what? She wouldn't get a table. So what? You kind of like think this person's flaky, but that's not really the whole story. Like the whole story is you connected with someone who was frustrated, lost, having a bad day, didn't plan properly. You didn't like scold them and it didn't turn out poorly. And like you got this insane story that will live with you the rest of your life that further forces like this feedback loop of like, hey, we're probably not as in control as we think we are. Or even if we are, there's this like intuitive force that's telling us to get up off the couch and go outside. And even if you're sarcastic and incorrigible, because I have very similar stories where like just something compels me like, no, do not go to that coffee shop. Go to this other one on the other side of town. And I'm like, no. And then sometimes I know why I had to do it and sometimes I don't. But either way, I just kind of think, I'm like, well, maybe I didn't just get in a 10-car pileup. Like, who knows?
Right. Exactly. Yes. And I think it's really important that event was so small because of my intractability and my stubbornness, I've really been averse to even kind of entertaining that this universe might be, responding to what I'm doing in this life or listening to me or wanting to co-create. And I needed this kind of experience so I could understand, no, this is real.
Yeah, I gel very much with that sentiment and how you phrase it. I'm not even going to like try to rephrase it because it was perfect, but it is so hard to be a person I thought was kind of goofy when I was growing up. Like, I'm like sentimental, like in a good way. Like I really like people. I just want things to work out. I do say prayers when I see ambulances and stuff. And like, I don't care if there's evidence to support it or not. I just want to be doing my best and try my best. And I just hope this universe is as organic as I'm starting to feel it is. So I'm going to save your best podcast story for later, because since we kind of just slipped into the podcast main focus, which is metaphysics, this would be like the opportune time to ask you. So with your life experiences and everything we just talked about, what is your opinion right now, today, that you think is going to happen when you die?
Oh my gosh, this, you have to know that this question has been the bane of my existence since I was a kid. I mean, I've literally been dreading dying and just not looking forward to it. And just, I don't know, this sense of just terror. So this question is a big question for me and one that I wrestle with, weekly, if not, daily. I do have to say that it's something that consumed me when I was a child, that I was a strange child. So let's put it that way.
Okay.
So when I die, what I think, based on all these stories I heard from so many different people, what I think is going to happen is, I think I'm going to, I don't know, I like quantum physics. So I think my soul is energy. I think that it's going to basically phase out of my physical existence and phase into its, I would say, its normal way of being, which is pure energy.
Okay.
And then I get to go have adventures in the universe.
I actually really like that. It sounds like recognizable and feasible to me. I guess I would push you a little bit just because that's the nature of this show I would wonder, how does time, and I'm considering like what Albert Einstein said about relativity and like the whole thing about like a bowling ball and gravity and all that stuff, like stuff I like vaguely understand, but don't really understand, but pretend I do. Right. But, does that factor in at all? Because if time doesn't exist the way we're kind of like goofily exploring now, when you say like the natural state, like is it before or after this, or is this just appear like a before and after?
Hey everyone, if you're a fan of the show, please head over to mikeyop.com and click the subscribe button. It's the best way to support us, and it's free. That's MIKEYOPP.com. Thanks.
Well, I totally believe that time doesn't exist and everything is happening at the same time. that it's all happening in an instant. But for some reason, there's some mechanism that we use or has been given to us so that we can experience things in a linear fashion.
Mm-hmm.
And so after I die, I think I'm going to go to a place that's timeless
Mm-hmm.
and that is outside of whatever we conceive of as time. Some place that, human beings can't even conceive of the quote unquote rules,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because it is so far beyond our limited capacity to envision or understand. And probably that's for the best.
Mm-hmm.
It might drive, some people mad. It might make people insane to even think about it. But where I would go would be this place that is timeless, that is outside of everything, that has no words.
I have always thought, especially from the first time I ever tried like a drug like marijuana or even alcohol, that the euphoria induced by chemicals is probably so appealing and addictive to us because we come from a place where that's normal and we're missing
Yes.
it here. So like, that's my first thought of what you said. So yes, I'm saying I definitely agree. I think the question I want to ask you is, and this is hard because this is a linguistic like barrier we have as humans. Do you go somewhere back to that place, or are you not really so real and you're already there and this you hear is more of an extension? Like, are you like the hand or the arm that's here and the soul is the anchored body, or are you the anchored body and the soul is somewhere else?
Yeah. Well, you have to know that I'm a pretty playful person at heart.
Okay.
And so, my grand vision for this is that I am not, an entity or a soul or a energy, let's say, that wants to learn and wants to accumulate knowledge and clarify myself, my soul, from the things that I've done in the past and other iterations of myself on this planet, and from iterations that are yet to come. I'm here to clarify myself, to make myself better, to improve upon myself. And so I'm all about, the soul comes in for the lessons, but also to provide acts of service, because I think we're all here to do acts of service, to lift everyone else up. And that is the only job that we have, is to come here to do works to help everything else, the environment, animals, what have you. And that when I die, my soul then, which is entirely here and not in another place, because in my image, we're committed, we're vested in the journey that is here. Then I get to go and play and have fun. And, I don't know, maybe I have a BFF that I can't remember out there in another dimension who's waiting for me to get back.
Yeah, actually, that's really cool. And I think there's definitely people who call that a twin flame, like you're like split.
Yes.
And then they say some of us are unlucky enough to have our twin flame here with us because it's a love-hate thing, because it's your half. So I don't know, but generally lucky. So I definitely should have asked this earlier, but I am like not anti-religious at all, but I was not raised with any religion whatsoever. I guess a tiny drop of Jewish, but really I know nothing about religion. So when you say you went to seminary and got an MDiv, I don't really know what either of those things mean. I'm assuming it's something Christian, but I could even be wrong about that. So can you explain that?
So I went to seminary at Iliff School of Theology in Denver, Colorado, and it is a Methodist university, so it's Christian. However, Mormons go there, evangelicals go there. It's very expansive. It's kind of a non-denominational, so, it can be non-Christian. I'm a pan-atheist, which means it's more of an animism, more of an animistic way of being in the world. So I believe everything has consciousness, that everything's sacred.
Wow.
And so when I went to seminary, they knew that. There were 2 other pan-atheists in my cohorts. So absolutely. Usually they end up becoming Unitarians or Unity Church members.
Oh, cool.
I haven't joined anything because I just don't feel called to join a church or just institution yet. So I'm kind of out here floating on my own.
That's so cool, because actually the only church I've ever been to is a Unity church locally here in Phoenix, Arizona, where I live. And it was after my divorce and a few other negative things going on in my life. And I had a friend who just said, hey, this place is really warm and happy, and they don't ever say like you must or like anything. And so I went and I was blown away.
Right.
I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I went like every Sunday for probably almost a year. I didn't stop going for any reason. I might even go back someday, but it was definitely, oh my gosh. I mean, it was just awesome. It was exactly as my friend said. It just felt warm and happy, and they just always talked about something like how to deal with conflict in your life and things like that. So I really respect that. That's cool. And I loved what you called Pan-Animism, and it's so weird because I stopped eating meat recently, and like I just did it for kind of what you described. It wasn't like some political thing. I don't know. It was weird, and I still don't even quite understand it. But I know that what you just said is at the core of why I feel like a bigger, more open heart towards like trying not to like step on ants as I walk on the ground. You know, like I understand we're naturally gonna, you know, there's just stuff happens, but that's cool. So so I mean, you really are. You're like a self-educator. You travel, you learn, you try to spread the joy that you're receiving. You're doing this podcast. I'm really impressed. So I think the last question before we wrap back up to the podcast is Peter Rabbit. I think I'm a writer. I got an MFA. I have published novels. I mean, that's like my main thing in life is writing. And I am fascinated by just her rewrites of the Peter Rabbit book series. Like that sentence, when I read it, I was like glowing, and I was like, oh, I can't wait to ask about this. So bring it on. When did you start this? What is this about? How do you do it? What do you do?
So it's going to be 13 books. I have the first 7 or 8 done and illustrated. I've released the first 3. I'm rewriting it to more forcefully engage with environmental degradation, sweatshops, human trafficking, cultural issues and struggles and ills. So the first book, A Tale of Two Rabbits, is a rewrite of Peter Rabbit, and it engages with what is happening in the woods. The second one is lighter. I mean, the books are dark, okay?
Mm-hmm.
They're
Cool.
very dark.
I like it.
Second one is called The Nuts Guts, and it's a rewrite of Squirrel Nutkin. So there's a little levity there.
Mm-hmm.
And Nutkin is going to actually be the trickster in the series. And then the third one is a rewrite of The Tailor of Gloucester. And it's called Boom Chicka Meow Meow. And it's about a cat who runs a sweatshop for the tailor in town. And it's my kind of anti-consumerism book, you know, and about how, you know, we just can't, we always need more and more and more. We just consume and consume. And so the books are really going to be and forcefully engage with how we're destroying our world, each other, the animals, you know, and not respecting, you know, there's nothing sacred in this world that I'm writing about. And so it's kind of, but I have to tell you that at the end of every book, there is a glimmer of hope.
Cool.
There is a glimmer of hope that things will be okay.
That's awesome. That was an incredible answer. That was very succinct. And if you want to get published, that's the way to get published, is you have to have a succinct approach to describing what you do. And that was amazing. You really like painted a good picture in my head. And I love dark, and I love cynical to a point. I hate it if it goes too far, which you don't. And but you did make me think about like one of my favorite things that is now like trending all over, which is people noticing that anti-consumerists are making money selling anti-consumerism. And like there's just this like hilarious snake eating its tail thing going on, and as like my words, not yours, our culture further delves into entropy. I mean, we're just eating ourselves. Like it's crazy. And actually it goes back to why I love the podcast. Is like the podcast to me feels very like just open. Like some people can support you if you want. You might have like a Patreon set up within all that, but in general, most people just do them, put them out, and they're free. And wow, that's really cool. You're very creative. I really appreciate that. So in your heart of hearts, dreams of dreams, would you rather be like a super duper successful podcaster, but these books don't sell, or these books sell but your podcast doesn't lift off? Like if you had to pick between one.
Oh my God, that is so not fair. Oh my God. Okay, let me think about this. You know, I think I would rather that the podcast, you know, be very successful, because it's an entirely almost altruistic process, bringing lots of different voices to the table and sharing a lot about the mystery and magic in the world, and it really lifts people up. Like the notes I get, the messages I get, they're like, this podcast was exactly what I needed today. You've reminded me of something. You know, it's always been these really intense, personal, beautiful comments on the podcast. So I'd rather do that.
That's so cool. And you're really talented. All right. So let's hear it then. What is, Tell us how many episodes in you are, and then which episode out of all of them, like especially if someone were going to search and listen to, would you say is like the most supernatural, super normal event?
Yeah. So I'm on 202 as of this week.
Nice.
So the one that's the most popular is by Mara Salitis, who's my guest, and her sister was an acclaimed Alaskan poet. And in the family, when their father died, he often talked about this black dog that would come and sit on the end of their bed. And so, they just put that in the back of their mind. But then her sister started, dying of cancer when she was about 50. And in the last week when her sister was dying, she started talking about the black dog. And couldn't Mara see the black dog sitting at the end of the bed? Whoa. And everybody was kind of mystified by this. And then one day, Mara and her then husband were sitting on the couch downstairs just talking. And they heard the front door open and close. And then they heard these little sound of clickety clacking dog toenails go through the foyer and go up the stairs. And they looked around and their dog was sitting right in front of them. And she said her husband turned to her and said, did you hear that dog? A dog just walked in the house and went upstairs. And Mara said, yes, I heard that dog. And then they went upstairs and her sister was talking to the black dog on the end of the bed.
Oh my God.
And so that story just blew my mind.
Yeah, that's crazy. We have this in common for sure. We're running a podcast where we just get gobsmacked by like some weird stories. I definitely know like the 3 or 4 that have blown my mind. Wow, that really is. That's like, yeah, I can't even like touch that. It's so interesting. And also it's hard. Like, if I didn't know you and you like post on Instagram that, I'd be like, yeah, whatever. Like people sell things and stuff. But like when you do these podcasts, you do get to like know the person and you hear them tell the story. Like I'll actually say this. There was one podcast that I attempted to do. I never released it, where I just felt like the person was full of it and I didn't release it. But for that one, there's just been hundreds that aren't. So wow, that's so interesting. Did she end up succumbing to cancer and everything? I mean, was it?
She did. Yeah. She died that next week.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, her daughter was at school swimming because she was a competitive swimmer, and she was doing her laps and she looked over and there was a black dog sitting at the edge of the pool.
Wow.
And she got up to go find, get it out of the pool. And by the time she got over there, it wasn't there anymore.
See, and my audience can laugh at me, but the same intuition that told you to get up and go outside and you saw that car told me to ask you that further extending question. It's just interesting. I was like, well, that's weird. I wouldn't normally ask. Why would I care? Like, which sounds rude, but it's true. Wow. Okay. Well, I'm definitely sold. That was really cool. I loved that story. And as you know, because you've listened to some of these episodes, I love to just give my guests the last word on the show. I think it's special, and I hope people listen this far and want to hear just something you have to say, and it can be whatever you want.
Yeah, I just want more people to believe in other people and also this world. And I mean, believe deeply and be committed to being a part and being part of one of the cogs of this world, helping other people and helping the world. I mean, I just believe in it. That's what I hope for everyone.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, and I will continue to be a fan of your show, and I will continue to spread the word. Inspiring people and giving people hope and being a part, as you expressed it, is so important. So thank you again. Please check out her podcast, Bite-Sized Blessings. You can just search it online. You'll find it instantly. And of course, there'll be a note to find her. And someday you should support her by going to whatever bookstore you go or downloading the Peter Rabbit book series that will terrify you, but at the very last second, give you a glimmer of hope.
That's right.
And to everyone listening at home, the best way to support my show is just to head over to mikeyop.com. That's www.mikeyop.com, and you can sign up for the once a week free letter that also comes with an essay I write. My name is Mike Oppenheim. You have been listening to Coffin Talk, and we will see you soon.